Hello, this is Gizmo88. A quick disclaimer before the video starts. This video will not be political. I do not do politics on this channel. I will be talking about tariffs, but I will not be getting political. If there are political comments in the comment section, I will disable the comments. So I just wanted to give the heads up. And anyway, back to the video. Hello, this is Gizmo88. And today we're going to talk about, well, you guessed it, PS5 price increases. This is something that really don't surprise me. If we go back about 4 months, I believe, Sony was stockpiling PS5 consoles, and that was to get ahead of the tariffs that they thought were going to place and stick. Fortunately, they didn't actually fully materialize. So Sony, had a sale back in early June. If you remember, they had that big sale. They dropped the prices way down, and of course, that was to sell off inventory, so they could later on raise the price. Now, going back again 4 months, they did warn us when they were stockpiling consoles that once that inventory ran out, that if the tariffs, remained, that they would have to raise the prices. So at this point in time, kind of, where we're at now, it's hard to recommend a PS5 at this point with the lack of games, lack of games from Sony, first party games. But even a lot of the third party games haven't been that good. So it's, really hit and miss. But yeah, anyway, so just looking at the prices here. So right now, PS5 was $499.99. So now it's going up to $549.99. Digital edition was $449.99. Now it's going up to $499.99. The PS5 Pro was $699.99, and now it's $749.99. Now keep in mind, the PS5 Pro. This is the big one. So I hate it when it does that. I just want to highlight this. Whatever. Anyway, it's a $749 price tag. This does not have a disk drive. So again, you still got to pay the extra $90 on top of this price to get a disk drive. And then if you want a vertical stand, because remember, they don't include vertical stands with these consoles no more. So now that vertical stand is an extra $30 on top of this price. So, and then if you live in a state that has high sales tax, like say 10% or more, well, you're pushing, $925, $950 potentially, all total. So, yeah, very, very expensive. Again, do I recommend the PS5 Pro? I have a PS5 Pro. I had a base PS5. I traded mine in on the PS5 Pro. Honestly, if you don't have an HDMI 2.1 compatible TV, and honestly, I would say either like an OLED or a mini LED. If you don't have really one of those two, and that's HDMI 2.1 compliant, then I probably would not consider a Pro. The other thing is, again, this doesn't have a disk drive. Now, this does have a disk drive. I will say that. So, you are still getting a break as far as $500 for digital. So you're still getting, around a $50 or say $40 break, roughly. Say 40 off the disk drive price. But either way, of course, Sony is blaming this on economic conditions, tariffs. So what I want to get into real quick is what a tariff is. I've seen a lot of channels where they'll talk about a tariff but they only give like a brief description of it, and only kind of like what I would call like a half description, because they only really talk about like what happens, like say here in the United States, but they don't actually talk about, you know, like the source. So we'll just use China in this case. We'll say like I don't know what the current tariff price is over there, but we'll just say it's 40%. Um, I think the average price I think is usually about 20%. So um, so obviously 40% would be about double that. But anyway, we'll just say it's 40%. Um, anyway, China charges us 40% for us to import products from China. Just the same as if China imports products from the United States, of course, we want to adjust our prices accordingly. So, obviously we want to charge, we want to charge them the same as they want to charge us. And if they want to charge us 40%, then we want to charge them 40%. Because obviously it wouldn't be fair if they charged us 40 and we only charged them 20. You know, or if they, or whatever the price may be. But again, it wouldn't be fair, if they charged us one price and we charged them a lower price. So obviously, the goal is, and that's the same with every country. Uh, the goal is everybody gets charged the same amount of money. But anyway, that's kind of where the tariff battle is. It's yeah, they raise theirs, we raise ours. It's you can almost say it's like a game of cat and mouse essentially. Um, but unfortunately, the ones that lose in that case are the consumers. So, but anyway, I just wanted to give like a brief overview of that. Again, not trying to be political. Um, don't want to be political. Politics are not on this channel. So again, I just wanted to give a description of what the tariffs are. Now, as far as the price of the PS5, again, we've seen Nintendo raise prices on Switch One. We've seen, Xbox raise prices on the Xbox Series X, all the way up to like $600 now. So again, I mean, it's these price increases are nothing new, and of course, these companies are going to blame whatever they want to blame. Sony just had, just showed record profit, and again, they had that sale back, in June. So obviously, if they can afford to have a sale, lower the price and have a sale, then, and keep in mind, they was, obviously there was still tariffs in. There's always tariffs no matter what. Uh, so they were still paying them then, and they lowered the price, and they still had record profit. So the fact of the matter is they're just trying to get more money out of people. That's all this really amounts to. They're just trying to get more money out of you. I wouldn't stand for it. I really wouldn't stand for it. I would go elsewhere. I would buy something like a Steam Deck. I'd buy a Nintendo Switch 2 before I would buy a PS5. At least if you buy that, Nintendo is going to support it with first-party games. You already know that you know, uh, they have a lineup of games coming out later this year. Um, so I would buy even the Rogue Alloy now coming out is going to be five something. The And Rogue Ally honestly is not a bad device. It is a bit heavy, and of course the battery life isn't that great, but overall it's still not a bad device. At some point, I'll do reviews for like the Steam Deck, and I don't have a Rogue Ally, so I can't review that, but I will do one on the Steam Deck because I do think it's a fun device, and it is some of these devices. I mean, they are niche, but they are fun at the same time. But again, I would recommend things like that. There's always alternatives to buying these consoles. Again, you can, if you got a gaming PC, you just game on there. If you need more space, buy additional SSDs. You know, there's lots of things you can do. If you're playing older games, I mean, you can even probably run them off a flash drive or something. Like, it's really not a big deal. But the bottom line is that if you buy a PS5, you're supporting Sony's decision to raise prices. And another thing I will mention too is, this ain't the first time Sony has raised prices. Just like Microsoft has raised prices multiple times. I would say really out of the three, Nintendo is probably the only one that hasn't consistently, seen price increases. Um, but I would also say they're the only one that hasn't seen things like layoffs and stuff either. So, you know, I'm not, I'm not defending Nintendo because I mean they have done price increases, um, but they haven't really, done price increases necessarily on Switch 2 other than the accessories. So right now, honestly, I think the Switch 2 is looking, I would recommend it over a PlayStation at this point. Obviously, Sony is looking to replace the PS5 as well. I mean, we're talking about the PS6. PS5 doesn't even turn 5 years old until November, so there's still a few months away from that. But yeah, again, look at the alternatives. You know, there's plenty of them out there. There's again Switch 2, Rogue Ally. There's Lenovo Go, Steam Deck. The list goes on, and there's just so many different ways to game nowadays. And even at that, buy retro hardware, you know, or buy even one of these like emulation systems that can emulate like several retro systems or something. Like there's so many retro games to play. There's so much fun to be had playing retro games. Honestly, myself, I prefer to play retro games. Like I play more than I ever play my PS5. My PS5 honestly collects dust, but that's just me, and that's just because the system has been rather boring. For well, I'd say for about half of the generation so far. Anyway, but yeah, this has just been some things that I wanted to talk about in this video. With the price increase and stuff, and let me know what you think. Let me know in the comments what you think about the price increase. And let me know if you're planning on, buying a PS5 or if you had planned on and if you're maybe, thinking about maybe buying something else instead or if you're still going to buy a PS5, let me, and I'm really curious too, if you're planning on buying a PS5 Pro, put that in the comments as well because I'm really curious to see, how many people are actually interested in the Pro, because Sony doesn't really like to, they don't really like to put out there as far as what the PS5 Pro sales are. So I would be really curious to see that. But anyway, if you're not subscribed, hit the subscribe button. Click the notification bell for upcoming videos. And again, yeah, feel free to leave comments. Like I said, no political comments though. But anyway, thank you and please subscribe.